staying on. The theme for this year's Mandela Day is one hand can feed another, or hashtag each one feed one, which is a call to help feed those in need affected by COVID-19. But this year's commemoration comes on the same week that the country recorded its worst and most deadly violence in post-democracy. To talk to me about this further, I'm joined now by the Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO, Sello Hatang. Dr. Hatang, good evening and thank you very much for your time joining us tonight here on In Focus. Arguably one of the darkest moments in a South Africa, a democratic South Africa, what we have seen in this past week. Yet we've got to be here today, on this day, celebrating the legacy of Madiba. How difficult is celebrating Madiba in a time of unrest? Is it an impossible task?
Good evening, Abutitabo. I think for us, it is a difficult but not an impossible task. It's one that calls upon all of us to do something. It's calling for action, that we are alive with possibilities as a country because a lot has happened previously, and we have gone through that and saw victory on the other side. So on this day again, we are pleading with the newsroom viewers that we shouldn't just be paralyzed by pain, because we are a nation in pain at the moment. We must understand that pain is painful, but it must then let us get on with the business of building our country.
I'd like to get your thoughts, because one of the themes you say this particular Mandela Day touches on is the theme of rule of law. I was having a conversation with Rani Mkiva moments ago. He says we still do not have justice for the poor in this country. What are your thoughts as a foundation?
Yeah, I think so too. And we have been saying that for a while as the Nelson Mandela Foundation. We've been saying the poor are getting the wrong end of the stick, as it were, that it's a raw deal that they're getting. And I think if democracy is to work and stick in our country, we have to make it work for the majority. We must make it work for those who are feeling that they are discarded, they are forgotten. And people that feel like they are the wretched of the earth, as it were. And I think until such time that we make our democracy stick that way, we might scream rule of law from an elitist point of view, because we think that that's the way we should be going, when actually it should also be saving the poor. That doesn't mean that one justifies what happens this past week. And if anything, we should be horrified by incidents that are going on in Phoenix, for example, in parts of KZN where black people are not allowed to get into restaurants. That's why it's important that we listen to the message of Antonio Guterres with the view that we must turn the tide against black hatred, but also against lawlessness in our country. And we can only do so if systems support a non-violent democracy. Our democracy is too violent at the moment.
Yeah. We are beginning to see, or at least, I mean, these events, like the events of this week, are showing us some of the moving parts in this democracy that we have not sufficiently addressed. One of the issues which, I suppose, when you think about it, you think of Nelson Mandela, it's the issue of embracing one another, the question of forgiveness. You mentioned now the scenes in Phoenix. Is it time to revisit that conversation?
It is. I think what this past week has also done is to let us to reckon with the unfinished business. You and I have had many conversations about this unfinished business. And people like Ntate Terry Bell, Dumisa Ntsebeza, for example, both of them have been saying for as long as I can remember, let's go back, Mayas Minsuka, they've been saying for as long as there's no redress, for people who Kulumane keeps screaming about every day, to say let's just deal with this unfinished business. We'll continue to revisit these things every now and then. You know, the saddest thing about our country is that we are so forgetful. Is that at the moment, what sparked this, the spark was the arrest of the detention, rather, of the former president. But it could have been anything, because if you live in a country that is so divided in vision, in its vision, with so many young people who are fast losing hope, with so many young people who are fast thinking this democracy doesn't work for me. How do we then make it stick? And I think that's why we should then be thinking about how do we make ourselves to bond better. So social bonding needs to be the language that we need to be speaking about, you and I.
We have a different perspective, it seems, at a tactical level as to how we get there. And this is part of what's happening within the ruling ANC, of the divisions of one saying, well, this is how we get there, and the other one saying, this is how we get there. How do we consolidate these two different perspectives so that at least we are working towards one goal?
You know, one of the things that we need to be fixing is civic education. Reliance on the big man syndrome. We need to be saved by some messiah from where we are at the moment. We need to be saved by a party, a political party. We need to be saved by some man who then will need to come through and do that, or some woman who needs to come through and do this. Until such time that we recognize that each one of us can lead in our own capacities. You know, I've been repeating this over and over in the last 2 days, that leadership was shown in corners of this country where it was unexpected. People like Remulo Sankwe in Mahikeng, who stopped the looting. And I'm using him as one example of many who stopped the looting without resorting to violence. In other words, scenes that you saw of lawlessness, as it's happening in Phoenix, are scenes we can avoid, because you have examples of where such things were stopped without even a pistol being taken out. And I think it's important that we recognize those kind of people. So arriving at the destiny that we want to arrive at, which is your question, means that we must begin to acknowledge leadership where it belongs. It doesn't belong with political parties. It doesn't belong with politicians only. It also belongs with us. We must then be going out as civil society, as the media, to say this is the route we should be going to help build our country. So civic education is important. The second one is strengthening our responsiveness to the needs of the poor. And until such time that we do that with much more vigor and political will, we won't get out of these struggles quickly. The third and last one, I think, is just basic education. Let's get our basic education right. Because some of these young people who are doing these things, you wonder, where do they come from? But they come from our homes. And until such time that we own this, the poison in our society, we are not going to go far as a country.
Yeah, own the poison in our society. That's such an important thing that you're saying. Earlier on, you mentioned that part of the campaign is also to say, don't look away. And it seems this is what we have done. We looked away. We didn't own the poison. We didn't look at the situation. The elite said, well, I got mine. The poor, go get yours. And this is what we have created.
You know, one of the things that we also need to go back to is how Madiba closed Long Walk to Freedom. Remember, he says that you climb the highest mountain. You get to the top. And you think, oh, I've arrived. And you then look down, you see there's many more rivers and valleys to cross and many more mountains to climb. And he then says, may we dare not linger. Let's just rest for a little while, but may we dare not linger. I think we lingered in our country. So looting happened. This is not the looting that I'm talking about that happened this past week. I'm talking about the looting of the state in the past, the looting that continues in municipalities, in other structures of our society. And I think until such time that we then look back and say, where did we go wrong in terms of this lingering? We waited too long. We didn't take action when we were required to. And looking away was another thing. We looked away, it's not my problem. The divisions that were happening in some parts of our country, that's not my problem. The struggles that the poor are going through, that's not my problem. And it's because we looked away that we are where we are. So may we dare not linger, and let us not look away.
A platform, I suppose the president talking of a platform that is being made available, a platform for urgency and acting with greater speed, a platform for truth, and a platform for transparency. Each one, feed one. I mean, in real terms, on the ground, practical terms, how is that going to play out?
Look, each one, feed one has been a movement that we launched last year. And when we launched it, it was at the height of COVID. Of course, Delta, the new variant of Delta, is showing us flames as a country at the moment. But when we launched it, we managed to travel over 25,000 kilometers on our roads, looking at the struggles that our people are going through. And we managed to feed over 100,000 people. And if we can continue along the same way, because tomorrow when we wake up, there will be many more South Africans who will be unemployed. Where are they going to supply their families with the little that they need? Today we provided loaves of bread to many people in Soweto, and that's not enough, because we need to be doing so. So in other words, it needs to go beyond charity. It needs to be about justice. When are we then going to ensure that there's justice that attained? So each one feed one is just lighting that candle to say there are so many who are in need. Play your part to change the course that we are going on. So we are hoping that people will continue to contribute. We launched an initiative called 4 Cans for Mandela, and that 4 Cans initiative is about collecting. You, if you can afford to give 4 cans, tin stuff, then it's not perishable. We can then distribute those as part of the food distribution process. But also each one feed one says we need to then be having vegetable gardens in our homes, because some of us have land where you have a piece of land where you can just have a little garden that you can then plow. And if we were to do that, and each one of us try a little bit, you might change how food insecurity that we have in our country.
Yeah. Hatang, there are some young people whom we saw, by the way, were among those who were at the front of the mayhem that we saw in the country, in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal last week, who are having difficulty engaging with the legacy of Madiba. They are hearing this tower that spent 3 decades behind bars fighting for political independence. And some are saying, well, we kind of got the political independence, but here we are today. We are battling with the economic independence, and therefore we find difficulty engaging with the legacy of this man. How do you help them?
Look, it starts with understanding that complexity of that leadership, of that legacy. I think it's to call it one thing or another, just a blanket sloganeering, where we have a lot of young people just sloganeering by a sellout legacy, etc. That's too lazy a way of looking at this legacy. It's complex. It's a legacy that was trying its best to build South Africa. But we've been given the baton of leadership by Madiba. And I think it's important that young people recognize that until such time that we move away from always believing that there's someone else who can lead instead of us leading ourselves, we are in trouble as a nation. And helping young people starts with reading. I think if young people read more, read widely, not just a little tweet here and a little tweet there, but that they take responsibility for their own education about what that legacy is about. I've hosted many young person at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and they are always shocked by what they see in terms of how big the legacy is, how wide it is, and how we don't actually out to defend it, but we're saying we try and live it. If each one of us as leaders in our country tried and lived that legacy, we might be able to change the course of history, as it were, and then to be able to gift the next generation something that's worthy of being gifted.
Sello Hatang, appreciate your time and thank you for joining us tonight on In Focus. Nelson Mandela Foundation CEO there, Sello Hatang.